And good morning and welcome to Judging by the Cover. Today we are joined by a fan of the game, Killian,
Hello.
and we're looking at Monster Hunter Wilds. So I have, I know Monster Hunter is a big title series, one of Capcom's. I wouldn't say flagship series. That probably belongs to Mega Man, but
It's number two.
it's a number two.
Yeah.
I guess they're when I think flagship, I think like fame, the earliest famous names. But Monster Hunter is definitely one of their biggest in the modern era.
Yes.
Um, so I have very little experience with Monster Hunter. I played the demo of one of the Monster Hunter games. I think back during the 3DS timeline.
That would have been for Ultimate.
For Ultimate.
Yep.
I don't know if it was for. I remember one of the games came out on 3DS, or
hmm
it was like available on there.
Yep. Yep.
But
That was
it
the
was
big
for.
game that. Yep. Yep. For
Okay,
Ultimate. Yeah, that was the one that we got in the West.
right. So I've played that demo before, like way back in the day. But Killian here, uh, I have
I,
spent a non-zero amount of time just chilling with Killian while he played. Was that the last new Monster Hunter that came
it
out?
was it was World. It was
World, yeah.
World. Yep. So I've been in the series since the original, or like the original Monster Hunter for the PlayStation 2 back in the 2006 is when I started playing. So,
Hmm.
and I've been like in and out. I haven't played every single one. I won't go to that level, but I've played just about every single generation I've played. I've played Monster Hunter, played Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter Try for a little bit, Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, then obviously Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter Rise, and now into the newest one, Monster Hunter
Right.
Wilds.
And just for a little disclosure, at the time of recording this, Monster Hunter Wilds is already out. It came out on the 28th.
Yes, and
And we are recording on March 2nd. So the game's been running for a couple days here, and Killian here has already put in uh, a
24
fair chunk of
hours.
time on it. Whereas, of course, I haven't played it at all. I've I've got that, like I said, that very minor exposure to the series. So my judgment here is going to be based on the store page, the trailers, the screenshots, which I will say from the trailers that are on Steam, they do look gorgeous. The trailers seem to highlight a little bit of the story and atmosphere, or at least kind of the what seem to be the main prompts of the story. Um, Now I remember from the last one, I had noted that the main story seems to focus on these hunter expeditions where uh, I don't know if I'd call them colonists or settlers necessarily, but like more of like a nomadic camp type of culture where they basically follow and track the migratory habits of the kind of of the kind of creatures they hunt, because that's what they pretty much deal in is these apex creatures. Which
Sorry,
this is a
real quick. I'm just trying to make sure. You're talking about the last big game, right? That you talking about World, or are you talking about
right
this game? Right.
world, or well, a little bit of world and a little bit of this one, because both of them
Oh,
seem to kind of have that similar kind of focus on the nature and learn like they're going out and hunting these creatures, but at the same time kind of like learning their habits and learning their environmental aspect.
right. Okay. Cool. So, I guess let you know. With World, it was much more focused. So what? There's like the normal monsters
Right.
and everything that. But what that game was actually more focused on was called Elder Dragons. These are like ridiculously overpowered creatures that can shape the entire ecosystem that they're in at the time.
Right.
So they're calamities. So they were trying to figure out what was going on. Why are all these calamities centralizing on this one location? So that
Right.
was the main arcing story of World.
Okay.
This one's this one's a little different, but we'll get to that part once we start really getting into it. I just wanted to like
Right.
differentiate that this is time has passed. This is not the same location even.
Right. Different location, which makes sense. I mean, the whole Monster Hunter franchise, it takes place in a fantasy world, but each individual game is going to have its own setting, continent, region that it's dealing with, I would imagine. So this one
Um,
having a different location would kind of create that different storyline for whatever's going on in this zone.
Absolutely. It's funny because that was a big debate coming into the game. Is this going to be set in the same continent, the new world, as
Right.
World was, or are we going back to the old continent? And there's that like we can now definitively answer what happened. So
Hmm.
so um
And
so
that was just kind of
yep,
my impression going in, like from the trailer, because the trailer
yep.
did seem to highlight that they were going into, or it seemed like they were exploring an area that they maybe weren't as familiar with. They did mention a new Rathalos,
Yes.
so during the trailers, a new Rathalos came up, which I know the Rathalos is one of like the big title dragons of the franchise. Um,
Wyvern. It's dragons are very specific to the
okay,
series.
so the
So that's
wyvern, which that's like the kind that has like they'll have the legs and the wings, but no extra arms, right?
yeah, so dragons are defined by having 6 limbs more or less. There's a couple of
Okay.
them that don't, but yeah, it's the four limbs and then the two with the wings. So that's typically what a dragon will be defined as.
Okay,
While
so
why
the nomenclature is very specific on their body types.
yes, they are all classified differently. Like there's brute wyverns, fanged wyverns,
Right.
leviathans, um, fanged beasts. And of course, we have now my cat trying to like cuddle up with me because he doesn't like it when I'm on the mic.
Of course. Oh, and then another creature came up that a name came up in the trailers. They mentioned a white wraith, and it seemed like when they were talking about and showing some of the, maybe not footage directly of the creature, but it seemed like some kind of lightning and mist kind of ability. They had something going on where they were going down on one creature, or going after one creature. Bad
Phrasing.
phrasing. I'm sorry, guys. Um, they were going after they're going after something, like going after a creature or doing some research out in the field, and then a mist started coming in that was like some kind of mysterious phenomenon, and it seemed to be tied to this white wraith. I don't know if a white wraith was the new creature or a nickname given to this new Rathalos after they had identified it. I don't. That is just
So
kind of what I'm piecing together from trailers on this one.
yeah, so from the trailers, if a little bit more in depth there, and this is all in the trailers. So the White Wraith is actually the flagship. So if you actually look at the
Right.
cover art, that's the White Wraith. He was given his name. His name is Arkfeld. He's a new monster to the series and everything like that. And the story revolves around him. They typically, whenever you see the monster, ever since for you actually, whenever you see the monster on the cover art, the story typically revolves around that creature.
Right.
So he's the main focus for the story. The mysterious Rathlos that you see is also involved with that, but he's not the focus.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too spoilerly, particularly as there are people sitting next to me who have not finished where I'm at yet. So,
Uh oh.
they're,
So hey,
yeah.
good thing that the judgment is by the cover with an expert, a resident
Uh,
expert who can say like, no, you're dumb and you got that wrong. You should be like, okay, cool. That's exactly what I'm because I'm probably gonna make some very wrong judgments here.
no, no worries. You got the general gist of it, that like
Right.
the people are coming like we're gonna call them it's the guild really.
Right.
It's not they're sending an expedition to this area that they haven't been able to go to for a millennia because it was just cordoned off for reasons.
Right.
Um, to try and investigate, well, what's going on here? We thought this was abandoned, no one was here, and this random kid shows up.
Oh,
What?
that's right. They on their flyover when they were in their airship. They did have that in one of the trailers where it's like,
Yep,
hey, there's somebody down there on the ground, and it's like, oh, they're apparently surprised because people aren't supposed to be here. But guess what? There's a person.
yep. And then they discover there's a whole civilization over here. So it's like,
You know,
whoa.
that sounds a lot like the Now, this I know the viewers might not recognize this, but I know you and I specifically had sat and watched there was a Godzilla trilogy on Netflix, an animated Godzilla trilogy,
Yes, it
where
was
it was
the.
you had the same thought, didn't you?
Yep, as soon as you said Godzilla, I was like, oh yeah, where there's a bunch of these people who.
Because the people like they left Earth and then came back after like some huge time warp, time skip kind of thing, but the world had the world's environment had shaped itself around Godzilla, and they found that civilization had actually moved on, and the descendants of humanity were basically adapted to that new environment. So I'm guessing a very similar kind of situation where somebody had lived and thrived in that new setting or in the changed setting that everyone else had abandoned.
You're more on the nose than you realize. And I can't say more without giving the spoilers. You're more on
Oh,
the nose than you realize.
I will say, like, it just kind of gave that impression, and it's like I
Yeah.
don't know anybody else if anybody else out there had seen that Godzilla movie trilogy.
It
I
was
will
on
say if anybody
Netflix.
watches the first one and thinks the movie is terrible, you're probably not completely wrong. But if you go on to the other two movies of the trilogy, the first one makes more sense.
Yeah, yeah. You have to watch the trilogy really to appreciate the first one. But
But
but we're not here to talk about we're not here to talk about Godzilla. We're here to talk about Monster Hunter.
right, that was only there as a frame of reference kind of point, and the
Yes.
similar kind of storyline. Now, this is not a criticism on the game or saying like, oh my gosh, they ripped off the storyline, because obviously Godzilla also was not the first thing to do that storyline. Somebody else
No.
doing a similar story with their own twists, their own turns, can always be fascinating to see. Um,
Shock Pikachu face.
I know, right? I do see on the store page there's a lot of wow, free DLC with texture packs and stuff already. They got a deluxe edition and a premium deluxe edition. So, it's a way of AAA games. They got some extra editions. I did
Yeah.
see on the store page or the trailers that they already have DLC and events coming even for free to players. So they
Yes.
got more stuff on the way, just like the last time, I believe.
Yeah, I can comment on this part real quick. Just to so the entire game, the base game itself is free. Like as far as you buy the game, any
Right.
title updates, anything that is part of the game will automatically get updated. You don't pay for that. All the things that you're paying for are cosmetic. It's seriously all of that is cosmetic stuff. There's no pay to win here. All those
Right.
like the premium stuff, because I can tell you I got the premium stuff because I want to make my hunter the prettiest little hunter it can be. It's just like it's just bonus stuff for longtime fans and people who like the dress up aspect of the game. So it's not like that is all what those like the premium stuff is. And again, they also still give they tend to give out a bunch of additional free stuff on top of that because they love their fans. So just wanted to preface that it's not a
Right.
pay to win situation and it's not.
Which I do, especially for a game that's already $70 on the base price. That is
Yes.
refreshing that they're not going to make that a pay to win. If it was a free to play game, like absolutely free to play with microtransactions, I would understand if they did add like premium items in there. But even then, like those things, I've seen other games be successful with having like no pay to win elements. Like the Path of Exile series was famous for that, where you could spend a lot of money on cosmetics, but then anything that could be called a pay to win, like their premium stash tabs, is like, okay, the amount that costs is still less than a big AAA game at $60-$70, when there I think it was like 30 or 40 that you could spend on Path of Exile to get like all the premium stash tabs, and then you're basically just paying for that, but it's a worthwhile payment for a very good game in its own right. Monster Hunter, they just have you paying upfront for the game, just like, the last 3-4 decades of the gaming industry, and here's the game, we just give you some extra pretty stuff you can buy, which of course fans of the series might go ahead and pay that 90 or $110 for those things because they really like the visuals, they like the franchise, they want to support the developers on that one. And that's a good angle when they're going to have higher price tiers where it's like I guess it's more of a like I want to give this extra money to the developers kind of thing.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, so like there's a couple like pre-order bonus again, like pretty stuff. But if
Right.
you like say bought the base game and then said, "Oh, I do want to get, I wish I had gotten those cosmetic packs," they are still at post-launch going to have those come out to the general. So for the people who didn't get the
Oh, so
premium
so
pack,
no like no real fear of missing out, no FOMO issue with anybody that didn't get the pre-order thing.
yeah, there's only like again, it's like just the pre-order bonus, which is like just a skin, like one skin.
Right.
That's like basically it. Like, there's like one or two other like very minor items, but again, nothing that like you're still available to get the big pack if you want it
Right.
after. So
That
yeah,
is refreshing, especially with all of these free DLCs here. Welcome pack, gesture set. Huh,
oh yeah,
yeah.
they. Oh, sorry.
The the little images they have on the gesture set, that those are actually adorable next to the
Yeah,
cat.
yeah, because like one of the big things also is like the community as far as like when you're jumping into a lobby and whatnot, you'll have people from all over the world playing, and
Right.
you can wave at them, you can do different gestures and things like that. So it's always they do make a good like social aspect of the game.
Right. Then that's refreshing to see that. Like a lot of times we have now I come from a long history of the Pokemon background and they do
Mm.
have like some of those things, but like even when you're doing those multiplayer things in Pokemon, it's like, oh yeah, I can wave, I can do a little dance or something, but it doesn't really like add too much to the thing since you have to like connect directly. It looks more lively in Monster Hunter.
It very much is though.
Yep.
It's a big aspect of it. Like for the previous game, for example, like they had the Guild Hub, which is coming in this game in title update 1. They've already announced that.
Nice.
um, where you have people coming into the guild hall and everything like that, and you can like cook together like in the game, where you can go into a sauna together in the game. You can laugh, like you can have your characters do all that.
Right.
So
And
it just again,
that kind of like opens up people that want to take a more role playing angle to the game and to their multiplayer experience. They can do that. The world is providing them an avenue for that.
absolutely.
Yeah, honestly, that makes it kind of feel kind of like if Monster Hunter met Animal Crossing or something, where you get to just kind of chill in a tea room or something like that.
Funny you mentioned that because so you can decorate again, at least in the prior game. You can decorate your room however you wanted to, and then you can invite players to come in and see your room.
Monster
So,
Hunter has an Animal Crossing element.
yes, it does. Particularly as you could catch fish, you can catch endemic life, and you can have them as pets in your room. That is something that has been in the game for quite a while. That's the one kind of sad thing. They haven't implemented a good way to do that in this game. But
Oh,
with title update 1 with the Gathering Hall, a lot of people suspect that part's coming.
right.
So because it's
It's
been a
one
long
of those
time.
add-ons that might take a little bit of tweaking to make sure it's fleshed out the way they like.
Yes, and for storyline purposes, there's a reason why there isn't. There is a in-game reason why you aren't doing that right now.
Right. Uh Considering that the like we said with the trailers, the way that it looks like they're going to a very hostile environment, they need to set their roots and make sure they have a secure border before they get too comfortable.
Yep. So
So
like in the other
story-wise, it
game,
makes sense.
yeah, in the other games, you've always been going somewhere that's already been established. Like in the
Right.
last
And
game,
now you're a part of that actual like
you're
building the camp kind of situation.
yeah, you're the first contact. You're at first. You're first on the scene.
Yep.
So
Let's see. So since we are judging by the store page, I'm just scrolling down slowly in here. We got they got news, recent events coming up. Right on launch day. So right next to released on Steam, we got news and updates saying that they've put up a troubleshooting guide for known issues. So now obviously I haven't played it, so me looking at that, like just kind of looking here, it's like what known issues are we talking about here? I think before we popped on, you had mentioned that some people were having, particularly on PC, some graphics issues.
Yes. So one of the big things is Monster has always been a console game. They released originally on the PlayStation 2 and have moved up with the generations, switching
Right.
between.
And of
Um, er,
course,
Sorry,
oh yeah,
but I was gonna say really with it was Monster Hunter World actually was really the first one that was on the PC like globally.
right.
So it and of course the problems with going from PC to console, you know what the hardware is, you can tweak to that. With a
Right.
PC, everyone has different rigs, everyone has different hard drives, different processors. Kind of hard to account for all of that. So they tried their best with coming out with a benchmark tool. They did that pre-launch, so that people can try and see the other rigs could do it.
Right.
And it seems
Minimum system settings is pretty standard for pretty much any game, but something new and big like Monster Hunter might have some pretty high requirements.
yeah, particularly as it was released with current console gen in mind, with
Right.
optimizing actually for the PlayStation Pro.
Huh.
So very like it was designed for that system. Um, so people who have slightly older rigs or maybe just isn't configured correctly are experiencing these problems.
Right.
So
That makes sense. And definitely feeling for the people that would be having those issues. Hopefully the community mostly isn't too vitriolic about it. I know I've mentioned Pokemon. I come from a Pokemon
you know,
background. We saw a lot of that with Scarlet and Violet. Now that one is strictly a console, and the games do definitely have issues. But at the same time, like, okay, you know what? I don't really care too much about NPCs in the distance walking at 2 or 3 frames per second. I care about like, are my battles fun kind of situation.
absolutely. And then on top of that, it's also cross play. So it's cross
Right.
platform and
Oh,
cross play on
so
launch.
if you're on PC, you're playing with Xbox and Mike and you're playing with Xbox and PlayStation people like all together. So the network has to communicate between all those different platforms too.
Yeah, and of course there's always settings to turn that off. So if you just want to exclusively play with your consoles or your
Right.
PC people, you can. But like I could tell you that it seems like it's a sporadic issue because our buddy Justin, who so it's funny we in the household there's three of us playing. Two of
Right.
us are playing on a PlayStation, and one of us is playing on an Xbox. We've had no issues. Then our buddy Justin, who's been playing with us and has about the same amount of log time as I do, he's playing on a PC and I haven't heard a single issue from him as far as technical issues,
Right.
crashing or anything like that. So
I think you've
again,
mentioned your friend now just in our personal background. You've
yeah,
mentioned him before. One of your like old longtime gaming buddies. So I imagine he probably has a pretty good rig lined up for
yeah, he
gaming.
has he has a pretty good rig. But also,
Yeah.
side note, that this person actually, it's a relatively newer friend, and he's actually relatively new to the franchise as well. He hopped in with Rise, which was the game after World, so
Right.
that was like 2020, and then he went back and played World, and now he's jumping in to play Wild. So he's a relatively new Monster Hunter fan, while I'm still the senior, quote unquote, in our little group. So,
Right.
but yeah,
So
no,
so you got like all basically a representation of all three platforms without having issues. And hopefully now they do say troubleshooting and known issues. They got a whole guide there. So hopefully that whatever if they are working on anything in the back end beyond that, maybe like some extra settings or things that they can tweak or slide to
they
give
all
like the lower rig people
a
a
little bit
little
of help, and they
flexibility.
And they also just last night they dropped. I finally was playing when it happened. They actually told me you were playing on an outdated version. They just did a patch last night for
Oh yeah.
every so
So those
so
devs are probably working overtime trying to make sure everything's running stable.
absolutely. So they're doing their best, and Capcom does a pretty good job of keeping trying to keep up with everything.
Yep. And let's see, they do have a nice little graphic here showing what you get with standard edition. The deluxe pack, you get some face tattoos, hairstyles, devil horns. You get some mounts, it looks like, and then a premium bonus in addition to that on top for the premium deluxe.
Yeah, it just skins for your mount. Like it's just again different skins and everything like that.
Right.
It's all cosmetic.
Yep, all cosmetic, but they do look like a nice little way to dress up your character. And if I've seen anything from games in the last, decade or like 10, 15 years, people like dressing up their character.
Absolutely.
I know people were upset about the lack of clothing customization in the Scarlet and Violet Pokemon games. Especially when you compare to how people loved the clothing options on the 3DS titles and on Sword and Shield, or how the sheer popularity of Final Fantasy 14, yeah, 14 is the online one. The sheer diversity of cosmetics of that game is insane to the point that people are making videos of just their characters in different outfits doing like skits and stuff like that online, the way old Warcraft Machinima did.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, I have never played that game either, but I love being able to see that people are having that creativity with the visual aspect of the game, even having nothing to do with the actual gameplay.
Yeah.
And
And
so I can see, like, depending on the cosmetic, people might actually do a little bit of that with Monster Hunter too.
absolutely. And they also like your character design, like your person, they've really over the years, and particularly this one, have really made it so you can basically make yourself.
Right.
Make yourself or make your
Like your
online
dream
persona.
avatar.
Exactly. You can make that. Like it's funny
Nice.
'cause people were starting to like do like funny ones where like I know I saw Kratos running around like in one of them like God of War. They made Kratos.
That's beautiful. I
Yes.
love I love hearing about those kinds of things, that people can just have that visual fun with stuff, and then they probably go in, if they're on chat, they're probably going, if they're on voice chat, they're probably doing the whole like imitating the voice and everything when they go in.
Boy, boy, get over here.
Oh my gosh. All right, so we have finally made it down to the description here. I know this is a big title, so this might be a little bit of a stretch of an episode. We got Deluxe and Premium Edition, Hornswigs. So they're just kind of outlining everything you get here in plain text form so people can see what, like, they're
What
very
you're getting.
transparent what you're getting. Premium bonus. You're basically, so the premium bonus, you're pre ordering for spring and summer packs, which those are. Those are always nice to have, being able to get those things.
Hmm.
Cosmetic DLC planned in spring. Various cosmetics such as layered armor, pendants, and more. Okay.
Yeah.
And then more coming in summer. So that's pretty simple and baseline. Can also be obtained separately. Please be careful of duplicate transactions. Yeah, that's probably a good thing to have, because I've seen people buying like the wrong version of a DLC, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I got to contact support. Hopefully they can switch it. Usually companies are pretty good about switching that if somebody accidentally buys the wrong version of a thing.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. That's why they try and give as much as like, please make sure you know what you're buying.
Exactly. And like I said, I know I keep coming from that Pokemon perspective, but Scarlet and Violet did that with their DLC. Same with Sword and Shield, where each version of the game, now, even though the DLC is functionally the same for both games, you do have to buy the Scarlet version DLC for Scarlet version. It's not like you buy one DLC and you have it for either one. You got to get the correct one. So there have been a lot of cases of people on either side. From what I've seen, people have been able to get that switched or refunded as appropriate. But hopefully, if there is any issue, they're able to handle that on the business end.
Yep.
And then finally, about this game, the unbridled force of nature runs wild and relentless, with environments transforming drastically from one moment to the next. It's a story of monsters and humans and their struggles to live in harmony in a world of duality, which, again, that goes back to that whole Godzilla movie motif, where you got your humans going into a territory that is very much not made for them. So if they're gonna exist there, they need to like understand the environment around them and be able to do that. I Just from this little bit here, I'm getting the vibe that the Monster Hunter franchise Now, I imagine there probably are assholes in universe, but the Monster Hunter franchise doesn't strike me as the kind of series that has necessarily a direct antagonist. Like, I don't expect there to be a villain to these stories. Like, maybe there's somebody who's a little bit of an asshole that you have to like deal with in your missions and stuff. But the fights, it's basically it's a very much a man versus nature kind of fight. The monsters are not villains or enemies necessarily. It's just these are animals that exist, and they will exist according to their nature.
So you pretty much got spot on. They do try and show about like the duality between man and nature and how the harmony they're trying to cohabitate, harmonize, and understand each other's role. In basically every Monster Hunter game, the antagonist, quote unquote, is either a mystery of why monsters are acting the way out abnormal. Why are they acting like this?
Right.
Or why is this elder dragon coming here? Well, they're not supposed to be here. What's going on? Why are they causing the calamity? There is one one elder dragon that is directly antagonistic um to humanity, and it stays in one location. It's Fatalis. It's think of your stereotypical big bad black dragon, and that's Fatalis.
Okay.
It yeah, like that's the
So there's like
one
one example of an actual antagonist to the series where everything else is just kind of force of nature situation.
yeah, and even then, it's a force of nature in the regards of it stays in its territory.
Right.
Humans are no longer allowed there for reasons.
Okay, so
That's
it's
it.
not even so much that he's an antagonist trying to attack and wipe out humans. It's like he just wants to be left alone kind of thing.
Yes, more or less. Like stay out of his castle.
And that sounds a little more fair. Like he's just a dude. And I imagine in any kind of story that did involve him, it would probably end up actually being, oh, the humans are actually the antagonists of this story invading territory kind of situation.
It's more of like he got pissed off and he started attacking other people, so we had to go fight him to get him to stop. And
Okay.
yeah, so it's a little bit of comedy, a little bit of comedy. It's
Yeah.
a that is a far more big
Right.
arching story as to why he is the way he is. Let's put it that way. that we don't want to get into here.
And that's kind of interesting to see, especially coming from Capcom that has a very I know a lot of their gaming history, like with Devil May Cry, Mega Man, and stuff like that. It's like there is a definitive good and evil dichotomy going on in a lot of those games, and in most games in general. This one's just like, yeah, no, it's like there's just a problem in the natural world, and we're investigating the environment. So
Yes.
we're not fighting against any ideology or any kind of evil force that's trying to conquer the world or destroy humanity. It's just, hey, there's a situation going on out here in the wilderness, and maybe some humans are at risk, but we understand that this is an issue of nature, not some malicious, malevolent entity.
Yes. Though some of them, just based off their nature, are a little more
Right. They're
nasty.
hostile, but not still not necessarily on an evil scale.
That's where it's like,
Yeah.
well, the question becomes, what is evil? Because in its own nature, it can be
Right.
seen as such. So,
I would say
again,
evil would be more along the lines of like, the world domination or like killing for the pleasure of it.
yes, rather than necessity.
Right.
So, and again, that is not what the normal monsters. When you start getting to that level, that is far more about what the elder dragons do, as they are known as calamities. When they're acting up, they're destroying stuff, things are going wrong. That's why the
Right.
hunters get involved. Otherwise, they would not care. They would leave it alone and let the
It's
Hell
wild to
Dragons
think
do what they.
about the hunters or the protagonists of, one of a very large gaming franchise of the modern era is actually about environmentalism.
Yes, it is very much park ranger.
I'm understanding more and more why you are so into the series.
Maybe just a little.
So it goes on, fulfill your duty as a hunter by tracking and defeating powerful monsters and forging strong new weapons and armor from the materials you harvest from your hunt. That's always been a cool thing too, how it's like, yeah, you're killing these huge monsters as a part of your missions and everything, but then, you get the body parts of these fantastic beasts and it's like, hey, I bet we could make a weapon out of this. Like we can make a bow or a hammer out of the tail of this absolute behemoth.
Yes, or this thing was really, really hard and really resistant to fire. Bet you if I made it into some armor, I could survive being in lava for a minute.
Oh, that and I've seen so much over the years. Art has come out from other franchises of being like, what if these creatures were made into Monster Hunter armors? And there has been some really cool stuff with that.
Absolutely. I know there's
Just
been a
the
couple with the
concept of
Pokemon.
the idea.
Yeah, I know there's been a couple of the Pokemon ones, which people may
Yep.
be sad about, but not gonna lie, the artwork's very cool.
I think it was a while back. I had seen like a Nidoking armor with a hammer, and it's like that just looks incredibly appropriate.
Absolutely.
So, let's see, a few years passed. A young boy named Nata was rescued at the border of the Forbidden Lands. Oh, so that thing from the trailer must have been a little bit of a prequel to the main story. An unexplored region to the guild has yet to survey. After hearing the boy's tale of his lone escape from a mysterious monster that attacked his village, which that's got to be news for the guild. A village out
Yes.
there in Forbidden Lands. Let's see, the guild organized an expedition to investigate, but it took them so a few years passed. Nata was found, so it took them that few years to set up the expedition. I'm guessing.
More or less. So they had to kind of and this is like within the first 5 minutes of the game, you actually see what
Right.
happen. So yeah, kid, like the survey team, like they're literally doing border patrol. It's kind of saying like
Right.
just making sure nothing's going on. They discover the kid. He's very obviously weak, malnourished. He traveled a very long distance to try and find people that he wasn't even sure they were gonna be there.
Right. He didn't know if other people existed. That feels a little like, oh yeah, we gotta look for information outside of our walls, kind of situation.
Yeah, he was sent as a last resort type situation.
Yeah.
So it took him a little, and it takes the guild. Obviously, it's a huge you know, inter. Well, I don't even know what this like nation, but like because I can't necessarily think of
But I mean,
nations directly.
the guild is probably
Global.
beholden to like some kind of local politics too. So I'm guessing they have to go through some negotiations of being like, hey, we got this information from the forbidden area.
Uh,
Can we authorize an expedition out there? So they have to get authorization. I'm guessing they have to get authorization, find volunteers, and all that kind of situation before they can actually
oh,
send people in.
so the guild's more like the governing body of the world, actually. Like they're
Okay, so
the
they are the
actual,
government,
they are the government, but they have to kind of like again, it's a global organization. They have to
right?
organize. It takes them a little bit to organize, get the resources, and they do a very good job of whenever they're doing these things. They go in knowing what's happening, which would make sense for going into a hostile
Right.
environment with things that can control the forces of nature. You kind of need to know what you're doing.
So
So,
before they send people in, they're like, we're going to, get extra observation at the border before we actually send people to cross it.
and not just like and try and plan for like worst case scenarios. Do a very focused group who know what they're doing, very experts. Like these guys are the top tier. They're like Delta Force. Like they
So
are.
it's a little bit of a slow acting government, but they are very competent at their job.
Yes, for a situation like this, again, for like more local things, like they have hunters on the ground, people who can just respond as needed. They have representatives there.
Right.
For an event like this takes a little bit more time and a lot more resources to plan for. Less. as you can imagine on a global scale for something like this.
Right, especially with I mean, I imagine that the guild at the border is not necessarily the head honcho, so anything they decide probably has to go through like their main headquarters.
Yes, yes, exactly. So you actually like you meet like the representative who's like in charge of this region ordering the Forbidden Lands. Like he's the
Right.
one who's trying to organize. He's like the one you're talking to and everything like that, who sends you on the mission. He still has to talk to HQ and make sure that it's all good. It's all above board because that's a
Exactly.
big that's a
Because if anything
big
goes
thing.
wrong, then a lot of heads are going to be on the table.
Well, it's part of also because like the whole thing with the Monster Hunter Guild is there's a very strict code.
Right.
Like it's not like they're like these hunters aren't going out and killing things willy nilly. They are contracted. Like they are only to kill X amount. They are only to capture X amount. They are only to do this. That's it. They
Which
are
goes
not
back into that conservation thing where like even in our real world hunting is considered a branch of conservation because you have to get like license and you're only allowed certain number of kills as a hunter.
absolutely. You're only given so many tags per year. You're only given
Right.
this amount. So yes, that's very much like in like real world sense. It's very like that's a fair comparison. Now of
Or a similar
course,
kind of thing that there was this show I had seen that kind of they go into a lot of the facts with a whole bunch of different topics, and one of the things was actually conservation in other countries where like people who do like hunting tourism overseas, like in Africa and stuff. There are some organizations in Africa that deal with their local conservation, and they'll be like, yeah, we can give you a license for hunting like one or two of this animal, especially if it's like, yeah, guess what, we have this rhino on our preservation that's been an absolute asshole to other rhinos, so we have license to hunt that creature, that specific one or something.
yes, and then again, like for like things like that, it's like it's a very specific animal like that they have
Yeah,
tagged. They know what it is, so it's not just going hunting like willy nilly. It's like that animal you have authorization to hunt that animal, and again
which
the funds and
goes
the
into
resources.
why goes into like
Yeah,
the whole, like you said, with the elder dragons causing problems in areas environments, so that's where you get a lot of licenses to be like, yeah, there's an elder dragon running rampant out there, so we need that taken care of, that is the hunt, so you're authorized to go and take out this
that
absolute behemoth for the sake of overall environmental protections.
yes, exactly. So of course one thing is I'll say it's a video game, so they have to kind of fudge how many numbers you're doing and how many. But again, it's a video game, so there has to be some fudging
Right.
there.
I mean,
So
considering it, like you said, it is a video game, so you basically do them. Yeah, you can spawn in a theoretically unlimited number of creatures that you need to hunt.
yes, so
But story, like when you're going into the game, mechanics won't always measure up to story, and that's something I'm very familiar with over the years.
absolutely. So just disclaimer for people who are like, it's not a one for one. That there's a reason why.
Right. That there's always that little thing going on. So
Yes.
yeah, doing the monsters, Forbidden Lands. So since you're going into a new environment that people aren't familiar with, there's probably going to be a lot of newer creatures too. Um, as opposed to
So
like I remember one of the big things with the world.
hmm
World. I think it was that I had seen at least by a peripheral exposure was
yep.
that there were new monsters, but there were, because you were in like a new world. But a lot of the game also had to do with migration, so you were dealing with a lot of older returning monsters for like familiar weapons and armor sets. This one, I imagine, this one probably has even more like new monsters and new weapons and armor.
So it actually has a really good balance of both.
Oh,
Because one thing I can like this part is this is not on the new continent. This is actually on the old continent, the old world. We'll call it that for
okay.
longtime players. But this is an area that we have not explored in a millennia. It's a very long time. So there are monsters here that we just have never seen, but there's also some that we haven't seen in a very long time in the series.
Because
So
even though this is a new region, it's still the same continent, and monsters aren't necessarily going to be. behaving to the same borders that we are as far as a quote unquote forbidden zone.
Absolutely, and one of like mechanically really nice things they've done is some of these older monsters, which these are in the trailer too. These things I'm talking about. This is like public knowledge. So like
Right.
you watch a trailer, you see this creature. Like one of the that hasn't returned in a very long time was Congalal. It's a pink monkey. It's a giant pink monkey.
Wait, was
Um,
that the one in the trailer that looked like it was pooping on the player?
yes, he was farting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I can't believe it.
yeah, his part of his mechanic is like he farts, he poops on you. He's a gross monkey.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, it's very gross.
Armor for poison resistance?
I don't remember off the top of my head if he's actually poison resistant, but the funny thing is he does eat poison mushrooms. Like his whole thing, like you might like see in the trailer, like he has a mushroom that he holds with his tail, which is prehensile. He can grab different mushrooms and eat them to have different effects, like breaths and things like that. Um,
Oh, okay, that's
yeah,
wild.
yeah, very
I mean,
wild.
that's the title.
Yeah. So they gave him obviously graphically a whole upgrade, and they gave him his classic moveset and more. He moves different than what players are used to. He acts differently. The whole thing with mechanically in Wilds is that all the creatures are creatures. They all have their own behavioral patterns that are independent of the hunter. So you can just go and watch them, and they'll do things for a while before they engage with, unless you engage with them, and then they're gonna act, they're gonna hunt, they're gonna fight you because they're fighting for their lives. So
So it's a lot more lived in as opposed to just like go to monster. It's standing there waiting for an encounter. It's like no, this is it has a behavior. It has like its own schedule.
yeah, it's not just walking around waiting for you to hunt. It's doing its thing. It's eating honey. It's bathing. It's sleeping. It's taking a poop. Like it does its things. So
That actually sounds kind of like they made them like a more vibrant version of like I guess I would call it like a Stardew Valley or Fields of Mystria that I've been playing a fair amount of recently, where all like there's all the side characters and everybody has like their own schedule. And while you might not see the ins and outs of their daily lives, their schedule will be like, yeah, at this time during the week, this character goes to the library, this character goes to the bar, this character goes shopping.
yep,
Where it's
absolutely.
yeah,
and and one of the things like these some of these creatures only appear like as you've already read that the weather is a big part of this game. They only appear at certain times when it's either time of plenty or time of low fallow, or when it's in that in between, when it's in that transition state. Sometimes monsters will only appear during that time. Otherwise
right,
they're dormant, they're not there. So like they have a whole behavioral system that the hunter has to go and learn to
right. So
understand how to.
you gotta know. And now I'm sure you could just go to an online guide and be like, okay, this monster appears at this time, or you can go in completely blind and just slowly learn and appreciate the environment and its patterns in your own time.
Absolutely, and one of the things that also that the this is one of the this is I can't say this enough. This is the best beginner game for Monster Hunter. Like the devs did took a lot of thought in that. So
That's always a big thing with game series is like how beginner friendly is the game? Like how many previous games of the series do you like is it recommended to really get enjoyment out of a game? And I have to give props when it's one of those situations where it's like you could have this could be your very first game and the game gives you enough tools to succeed as a new player, enough information to appreciate the world and story without having to be invested in the franchise as a whole.
absolutely, and the so you're given so you're the hunter, and then every hunter has what's called a handler. So it's someone who's a guild authority. Like they
Right,
have the power invested in them to authorize hunts to and they're bookworms more or less. They're
right,
the researchers. They will typically, when you're going something, they'll give you a preface. They'll give you information to start figuring out. They'll give you the puzzle pieces you have to put together to make the picture to understand what's going on.
Right.
So they'll typically tell you, oh, this monster seems to be only appearing at this time. So they're telling you go at this time and things like that. They're going to make sure you understand what's going.
So in a way, like the handler is the field researcher, and like you're the actual hunter that does like the physical protection work. So it's kind of like a two-handed thing where they are your guild appointed handler. They're the authority in the field, like if in order to authorize anything that the guild would say yay or nay for. But at the same time, you're also kind of a bodyguard to the researcher.
Yeah, so like you and your handler work hand in hand. Like
Right.
they're overseeing you, to make sure you don't go berserk. Let's put it that way. Not that that's happened in the games, but again, it's to make sure there's a check and balance system.
Hmm.
So, and there you have the authority to enact the guild's will. So that's how that is. Like you are given the authority by the guild to enact what needs to happen.
Right.
The handler is the one who does all the reports, does all the paperwork, who makes sure everything is done, and if there's an issue, they're the one to stop you.
And
So,
as long as the hunter is obeying the handler, like their instructions and everything, everything's all good. And
yeah,
considering that, I'm sure the hunters go through like their own code, like as far as background, their own code and training and swearing of an oath to the guild in
uh,
service.
absolutely. Like, it's again, like so. I think you're gonna get into this in a little bit. I'm not sure. Like your main character in this game, you're actually already labeled as like an alpha. You're
Right.
already an experienced hunter, which is unusual for the series actually. Normally, you're actually a beginner. You're a baby. You're just
Right.
you're at the very lowest.
But
At this
because of the
low,
story, like they can't send a new person as the front expedition into unknown territory.
absolutely. So you're already like your character's already been there, done that. He or she are already an experienced hunter. So coming into this, there's already a level of expectation or a level of understanding, like in dialogue, that
Right.
your character has. And this is also a big change in this game. Your character talks. In other games, your character is mute because it's an
It's a
old,
non-silent protagonist?
non-silent protagonist, and
Oh
they
my
leave.
gosh.
Yes, right, and they leave. Shocked is super shocked, but they leave the dialogue. I'm gonna say generic enough to where your head canon, however you want to say it, can still fit in no matter what. Because
Right.
they leave the
It's not
back.
that the character is not like I would say like some games like Grandia or certain Final Fantasies have like very defined main characters as
Yes,
opposed to other games like Legend of Zelda or Chrono Trigger where your main character is functionally mute, so anything that you think or say is that character's personality.
yeah, absolutely. Like the character when your character when they're responding is basically vocalizing what I would say 9 out of 10 people would think. It's a very generic
Right.
response to whatever is happening.
It's like not an emotive situation. It's just a like, yes, hunt accepted.
Yeah. Not necessarily. There's a little bit of emotion there. Like they have a little bit more dialogue there, but it's more
Okay.
like the gist is, yeah, I know I need to do this, or hey, you're wrong. I'm gonna take care of this. Like that. There's a big story moment where your character is basically like, no, I'm gonna take care of this. Like I'm the hunter. It's my job. I can
Okay.
I can solve this problem with what I need to do. I will take the burden on. Um, that is a far later story beat that happens, but your character is actually pretty emotive. But they don't give him like it's not like they don't talk about his backstory. They don't talk about where he's been. They actually he's very like that's a story for another day. Like that's
Right.
how they leave it. So they you can fill in your backstory with however you want to. You're just here in the moment.
Right.
So
What's
yeah,
important is the current gameplay and the current story.
absolutely.
So let's see. We got the environments can drastically change with the weather. Monsters have their behavior patterns with different weathers. Um, the world around them changes, so must the hunters and their tactics, we see. Not only will the hunters have a multitude of weapons and armor to choose from, but the art of the hunt itself has evolved. Oh, so the hunters learn to anticipate monsters' behavior, familiarize themselves with the environment. So that comes into, like you were saying, with the how you can observe the monsters in their environment and be like, okay, I'm just gonna follow this thing at a distance and see like how it moves through this environment before I engage. Maybe you can wait until it gets into like a more open or a more closed off area, depending on where combat might be more advantaged.
Or even like, or hey, he's coming into like a column where there's a bunch of pillars that I can knock down that deal extra damage to him.
Oh, environmental effect, yeah.
Yeah, like the environment's very much a big effect in this game. That was like the big one of the big pushes in this game is the environment itself, like
Being
how the
able to
world
interact with and destroy the environment to affect the battlefield.
and also how it affects you because it works both ways. Where
Right.
like so
If the
and
monster
this
knocks a mountain onto you, well, good luck.
yeah exactly. Um, or you actually miss time and you fall on a mountain. Like you're not gonna get hurt, but you miss that opportunity, and now there's clutter in your way and
Right.
laser beam of death in my face.
And then
Um,
you got hunting partners, other expedition members, which is goes into that multiplayer, which has been a huge thing of the Monster Hunter series.
yeah. So one of the also big in it. So like going to like real quick with talking about the gameplay part of it, they overhauled the whole gameplay. Like they improved upon it a lot in World. They improved upon that even more so in this game. There's a whole new combat mode called Focus Mode that
Oh,
really just revolutionize how each weapon functions when it's in that mode. It's a much more direct, like focused mode. Uh, Hard to explain verbally. It makes the hunt feel more lively and more accurate to what you're trying to do.
right.
Um, on top of that, um, for the longest time, whenever you need help with something, like say you're stuck in a really hard hunt, you only could depend on other players, online players.
Right.
Um, Mechanically, like for socially, that's great, but for people who one maybe have bad internet or just don't
Or
like who are don't want to be social,
or
they
somebody
were
who
kind of
might want more of that single player experience and might not want to risk getting carried by a higher level player or something.
absolutely. So when you can have a setting now and it just automatically will happen, um, you can have NPCs come in and help you. Like if you set what's called an SOS flare, it'll
Oh.
automatically uh, generate NPCs who are competent. It's not like they're just running around not doing anything. They're actually very competent NPCs that are doing damage, that are following your lead. It's very clever.
Right.
Until like so, you either
And then
keep it like
they'll also be appropriately scaled to your level and to the hunt that you're working on.
absolutely. So it's not like they're handicapping you. It's that they are acting as another hunter in the programming. But so if you let's say if you don't want to play online, they'll just be there. But if you want to play online, they'll jump in, work with you until another player jumps in, and then
Right.
they'll fall out, and then the actual player will hop in. So that way you're still getting that same experience and still getting that same assistance that you requested.
That's also very new player friendly, where somebody might want to come in and like experience the game at their own pace without having somebody like come in and just steamroll something.
Absolutely. So it's one of those things that the scaling they do a really good job with that.
Yeah, just kind of cycling through screenshots here. They do have now. I've from the trailers and from these screenshots, the environment they look like they do have a very diverse range of environments and a lot of different kinds of creatures. You got mammals, reptiles. I saw at least one or two that looked giant insect like.
Yes, there are definitely some spooters,
Yep.
well, some spiders. One of the also going actually real quick going back to actually to the beginning part of the game. This might be also why PC players are a little unhappy right now. In the beginning of the game, you're in a desert region, and it's in a time called the fallow. So it's
So that's
desolate,
like
de-
the drought time when there might be some hostile hunters out there, like trying to scavenge up whatever food they can find.
and the environment itself is very grainy because there's lots of sand in the air, lots of it's just not it's not pretty. If you play through the game for an hour or two,
So people are
you
upset that a sandy environment looks sandy.
and grainy. That's the thing. It looks grainy, so it makes it graphically look bad, but that's not the graphics, that's the environment. It's very gray, it's very dull, so it's not vibrant because that's in the story, not what it is.
Okay, I'm
So
looking at screenshot number 3 here on the Steam page, and like I see what you mean with the desert and like the grainy, sandy background, and I'm like, that doesn't look like a graphical issue. That looks like there's just a little bit of a sandstorm going on. Like
exact. So people are like people who aren't paying attention aren't really aware of what's going on, so they're a little being upset
it's
spaghettis.
an environmental context to the game. But then I go to the very next screenshot, and there's like this some blue atmospheric effect going on in this rock formation. And it's like, okay, there's like some sand and dust in the air, but oh my gosh, that looks gorgeous with the background.
Absolutely. Again, the time of plenty and the time of fallow are very different experiences in each region.
Right,
Um, I could say like right now, like where I'm at in the game, I'm in a time of plenty in the next region over, the jungle, which again, it's a spoiler. It's in the trailers.
right.
It's seen. Holy cow, is it just gorgeous? Like, and the amount of detail that these developers put in, like it's not just the big monsters, but the small monsters, the small endemic life. Everything it has its own agenda it's doing. It's not just static waiting for you to catch it or look at it. It's doing its own thing. It's a real world.
Yeah. I do see from one of the screenshots, I was just cycling through to see if we had like some examples of the jungle. It looks like all of the screenshots seem to come from a little bit more of the desolate regions.
Yes,
I did the trailers showed like jungle. One of them you had the characters traveling across what looked like a jungle's canopy, which
yes,
a jungle that thick where you can just walk along the treetops is insane.
yes, it's a very old jungle. Um,
But the screenshots seem to all come from the desert one. This one looks like a native village of whatever region there, and it looks like the hunters coming in talking with locals. So I'm guessing you
yes.
do actually get to the village at some point.
Oh, so like in the story, like, and this is
Right.
talked about in the trailer. So like in the trailer part, they're very vocal about this. The kid, he's from a village way in the internals of the Forbidden Lands.
Okay, so this one
It,
probably wouldn't be his village.
it's not his village, and each region you find, you unlock, you find people there. You find that there's been people here this whole time,
Right.
and they survive, and they're doing their own thing, and they pull from different cultures too. You definitely see different cultural inspirations for each region that you're going to and things like that. So it's a very cool way of showing that this world is not just one type of people or one
Right.
type of economy, or it's a collective working towards a greater goal.
Hmm. It just seems like now from the screenshots in general, they do seem to mostly be taking place in those desert areas. So I'm wondering if most of these screenshots are actually from the early games, so they
They
didn't
are.
show too much in them. Which I feel like that kind of detracts a little bit. So people are getting less. Now this is again just on the store page. I'm sure the social medias, and I did see on the trailers they showed more environments in the trailer.
Yes,
Um,
in the actual moving trailers, they show more of the world, but for the static shots, they were very
yeah,
conscious about only really showing the beginning stages because they didn't want people to
They don't want to
know.
spoil too much of it early on,
Absolutely. So there's that.
which I do wish I did see more of the environments in the screenshots, but then when you only have 10 of them down here, if you put in too many environments, then you're going to have like 20, 25, 30 screenshots to go through.
Yeah.
I did see they did have one of the trailers showed a what looked like they were lighting a volcanic forge, it looked like, and there was something to do with a fire-based creature that seemed to be reacting to it.
Yes, and that happens later in the game too. That's the third region you would discover and everything
Right.
like that. So
So just from the trailers alone, there's a volcanic and a forested region that aren't shown in trailers, but that seem to have. They did show that there was like its own kind of local culture and stuff revolving around that volcano.
yes, yes. Not actually a volcano. It's a little bit more involved, but again, that's more
Oh,
story
okay.
part. But sorry, real quick. Um, can we pause? Sorry. Um, we have hair appointments at 1 o'clock. I didn't realize we were
Oh
rerunning
yeah.
this
In
long.
fact, we're pretty much good here. I think I got pretty much what we got here. I would say
Um,
overall, you know what, Monster Hunter Wilds, I personally am rating this a 10.
yeah. 100% recommend. I know there's more of it that we could have gone into, but it's a very vibrant world. The devs did a really, really good job with giving you a solid story. Again, I beat the main story in 20 hours or so, but there's a part two to the story.
Right.
They add to the story. Replayability. It, you're gonna constantly be wanting to go hunt new monsters, get better gear, and they do title updates. And this is all
Right.
actually building into Monster Hunter typically does for the mainline games. They do a main title, which is Wilds, and then there's going to be an expansion. We saw this last time, as most people will remember. It was Monster Hunter World in 2018, and then 2019 was when Iceborne dropped, and that was the expansion.
Right.
Um, Mechanically in the games, what happens is the main game is low rank and like the lower level stuff, and then you're gonna get into some more like harder stuff. You're gonna be fighting monsters you fought in low rank at a harder level, new move sets, things like that,
Yeah, they get like a new
and then
tier added onto them.
excellent, and then also some new monsters that are coming into it for story reasons. The expansion that will come out in probably a year and a half, maybe two at most. I think it's gonna be a year. I don't think they're gonna wait that long. Will introduce what's called G rank or Master rank. That's where everything gets tougher. They add a bunch of new monsters, a whole new story stuff gets added to it. That's adding
Yeah.
to the story that's already involved. It's a continuation.
So with that kind of
So
history, like we can have some good faith that that the game itself will definitely get a lot more content added in on top of having solid post game, solid social aspect for people to play together to that really extends the gameplay. And for anybody now, I will say just as a consumer on my part because of the time investment, 70 it's probably not a price tag I would put onto the game based on me personally not being the type of person that would put as much time into this game to get that value out of it, but for so many other people that would put that time in, this is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. Just on the store page and the little bit of extra information out there that would be coming from their socials and stuff like that.
yeah, absolutely. And like, if for people who are interested in like they don't want to put in the money investment at first, like Monster Hunter Wilds, sorry, Monster Hunter World and Rise, for example, are on the game passes at this time.
Oh, so anybody
You
with that can get some
y-
extra experience out of it.
absolutely. Also prior to Wild launching, they did betas to give people kind of like a taste of what was going to be happening and things like that. So
Right.
open world betas. So
I do
I
see
highly
they have
encourage.
a Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark that you can download here.
Yeah, that was the whole thing
Yep.
for the PCs to try and see that thing. But also, yeah, people don't want to pay the $70 mark, and if people are interested in the series but don't necessarily, again, they're scared by that
Yeah,
price
because
point
that
and don't
is
know
a
the
bit of
time.
a
Oh,
big AAA title.
absolutely. So give it, I would say, 6 months or so, and you're gonna see it probably drop down to like the $50, $40 range, is when they start doing summer sales and things like that.
Yeah,
Because
keep an eye out for the sales and stuff.
yeah, so but yeah, so
Yeah, I think
um,
that pretty much covers what we got for today. I know this has been a long episode for the big title,
yeah, so if we ever
but
wanted to do a part two, just talk about Monster Hunter, I'm always down for that.
oh yeah. If we come back, we can do a round of follow up depending on what if anybody has any of their own thoughts. By all means, leave them down in the comments down there. We'll be up on YouTube. We'll of course be coming back next week with another game, but I may be slipping in with some extra judging by the cover shorts based on some other things that come out. I know the Pokemon thing just had a nice big situation with their next set of games. But in the meantime, thank you again, Killian. You all have a great day.
Yeah, absolutely, a
Anybody out
pleasure to
there
be
that
here.
has been looking forward to Monster Hunter has probably already bought this. And for if anybody's like me, maybe check out some of those Game Pass options. And if you're waiting for it to go on sale, we didn't even get into the felines at all.
Oh my god, they're
Yeah.
the best part of the game. Oh, sorry, real quick.
Oh my gosh,
Prior,
just the trailer.
sorry, sorry, yeah, sorry. One last thing about this. They've been in the game for a very long time. They're your little buddy and everything. Big thing with this game, you can either have them still meow with this thing they've always been doing. They always meow, or you can have them actually have dialogue and actually talk to you because you can understand them. They speak English. English. I'm gonna call that English. Whatever language
Eng-
you're speaking.
English with a Y.
Yes, English. But the funny thing is, like, their dialogue is some of the best in the game. They
Oh
just
my
have
gosh.
some hilarious dialogue. They did amazing. Like, again, the they just again 10 out of 10 for all of that. So,
I'm probably gonna go on YouTube and look up the feline or palico dialogue compilations and just see what it
oh,
looks like.
oh yeah, it's very very cute.
Oh boy. Um, if anything, that would probably be a big selling point right there. If anybody was on the fence, it's like I must have talking cats.
Yes, I mean, the internet does love cats.
Oh boy. Well, thanks again. I do hope you all have a good week. Anybody
Yeah.
else out there playing Monster Hunter, enjoy your game. And anybody that's trying it for the first time, let me know what you all thought. If I'm now again, me personally, I'm probably not the person that would go and buy this myself just because of the time investment that would go into it, considering that I do have always other projects taking up my time and attention. But this is a game series that I have respect uh for everybody that is like invested in the franchise.
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
it's if you're looking for anywhere between a 40 and 500 hour time sink, this is the game for you.
Oh yeah.